The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to the Women in Technology virtual presentation today. Check out our homepage, wit.pass.org, for our virtual group. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can see other presentations that are coming up presented by women, along with SQL Saturday and past summit presentations. I am Michelle. I am co-organizer of the Women in Technology group, and we want to thank Redgate. Redgate is one of our wonderful sponsors, and they have been a sponsor for a while, and we love Redgate. If you haven't already, sign up for Past Summit and use our code, save $50 at registration. We have upcoming webinars. Here are some of them that are coming up in the next couple of months. And again, you can find this information on our website, continually being updated. Other speaking events, we have some this weekend, some next weekend. And today's presenter is Leslie Andrews. Leslie is an IT professional, 20 years of experience, and first time I saw Leslie speak was at SQL Saturday Denver, and I was truly impressed with her presentation and started following her on Twitter. She is going to present Azure Data Engineering 101 today. So,
thanks, Michelle.
Sure.
Which presentation did you see me do in Denver? Which one was that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I remember being a DU. I don't remember the name. I'm sorry. I remember
okay.
being a DU. I sat in the front row. You talked about working with the police in Albuquerque.
Yes. Yep.
It wasn't last year, maybe a couple years before that.
Probably just something on warehousing design.
Probably, yep.
Probably, yeah.
All
cool.
right.
Well, now we're going to talk about data engineering. How cool is that?
I'm making you the presenter.
Okay, you're doing. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes. Can you all see my screen? Does it have the GoToWebinar stuff on it? Is it all good?
Yep.
We're good? Okay. All right, let me figure out how to make my mouse work there. All right. Great. Move one more thing out of my way. Okay. Good day. Thank you for joining me today while we talk about becoming a certified Azure data engineer. I'd love to know where everyone is attending from. So if you want to post your location in the chat, I'll check that out later, and that would be great. My name is Leslie Andrews, and for some reason, my clicker just stopped working. Why did my clicker stop working?
I don't know, but you have someone
there we go.
attending from the Netherlands, Leslie.
Oh, very cool. All right. So my name is Leslie Andrews. I am currently a senior consultant at 3Cloud Solution. Like Michelle said, I have 20 years of experience working in government, software development, and data warehousing. I spoke at 7 SQL Saturdays in 2018 and 11 in 2019 as an Idera ace. I competed in Speaker Idol at Summit in 2018 and 2019, and will be speaking at this year's virtual summit as the first step in the Becoming an Azure Data Engineer learning pathway. And I am a certified data engineer. Today, we're going to talk about the types of certification that Microsoft offers, the requirements for getting the data engineer certification, practice sites and learning paths. We'll review some testing topics, and finally, how you actually sign up for and take the tests. So you want to be a data engineer? Are you sure? In September of 2018, Microsoft changed the way that their certification system was set up, and certifications were changed to role-based. There are currently 9 roles that you can become certified in: developer, administrator, solutions architect, data scientist, AI, DevOps, security engineers, functional consultants, and of course, the data engineer. There are currently 6 fundamental certifications, and these are good for people who are new to a technology or looking to start or change a, come on, switch slides. Okay. Good for people who are new to technology or looking to change or start a new career. There are some advanced and specialty certifications. Currently, the SAP Workloads and IoT Developer and the Microsoft Certified Trainer. The functional consultant certifications all focus on the dynamic 365 set of products and services. There are a series of Microsoft 365 certifications that mostly fall under the administrator role. And the rest are the Azure-based certifications: database administrator, data analyst. It could be that a lot of you would be happy having that certification because you work with a lot of the data, or maybe you're interested in AI engineering, and that would be a better fit for you. But if you decide that you really want to be a data engineer, here's what the certification says you'll have to know how to do: design and implement the management, monitoring, security, and privacy of data using a full stack of data services. And today we're going to explore some of the services that are available in the stack during our discussion. There are 2 data certifications. The Data Fundamentals is awarded by passing DP 900. And if you're new to data architecture, or you just want to see if this is a learning path that you want to continue to pursue, this is a good introductory to all the topics. The Certified Data Engineer is awarded after successfully completing both DP 200 and DP 201. So let's talk a little bit about the tests and what they cover. The main difference is in the implementing versus the designing. In DP 200, someone else has already decided what the solution is, and it's your job in the test to implement those decisions. In DP 201, you are asked questions about what the design should be based on a given scenario. It's good to know that the tests don't cover any preview features, and I personally found that there was a lot of carryover and duplication between the 2 tests and the topics and the questions. Each test is concentrated into 3 areas. DP 200 focuses on implementing a data storage solution, managing and developing the data processing, and monitoring and optimizing the data solution. When we do a deep dive into each of the concentrations, we see the specific skills that are assessed in the test. DP 200 was just updated a few weeks ago on September 24th, and I'm working off of the testing requirements as of that update. So if we look into the implement a data storage solution at the non-relational data stores that are available, we can see that these are things that if you come from a SQL background, you may not be very familiar with. We're used to dealing with the relational databases. Cosmos DB is the Azure NoSQL, which stands for Not Only SQL, offering. It is a globally distributed, low latency, multi-query API database for managing data at scale. Blob storage is object storage solution. It's optimized for storing unstructured data like images, files, audio or video. You can store log files, backups, your disaster recovery data, and you can use it for archiving your logs. The data lake storage Gen 2 is built on the blob storage, and it allows you to do a hierarchical namespace similar to a Hadoop in the blob storage, and it combines benefits of the previous version of the data lake storage, so Gen 1 data lake. When you're taking the test, you have to be able to know which of these options are the right ones to use in a given scenario. The Cosmos APIs. The Cosmos DB supports many standard NoSQL databases. MongoDB, Cassandra, and Gremlin are the top three that they've built APIs for currently. You have to know which type of NoSQL database is used in different scenarios. For instance, the Gremlin API is used for graph databases when you're using nodes and relationships. Cassandra is the API for the columnar databases, and Mongo is a document database. There's another one, the Table API, which is used to connect to Azure Table Storage. So you have to be able to know the different APIs that are available, when you would use them, and what type of information you get out of them, and how they are created, the containers versus the tables, and whether they store rows or documents. And so you have to be able to answer questions about those types of topics. As many of you know, in Azure, there's usually 3 ways to accomplish almost anything. You can do it in the portal, you can use the command line interface, the CLI, or you can use PowerShell. There are topics that involve how to create and do things using all 3 of those techniques. So you have to be able to recognize PowerShell script and command line interface, and what options you would choose to create different things based on a given script. And you have to know the syntax. And finally, the last topic I'll talk a little bit about here are the consistency levels on a NoSQL database. You have to be able to determine what is the best consistency level based on the scenarios that are provided. Distributed databases like this rely on replication for high availability, low latency, or both. And they have to make trade-offs between the read consistency and the availability, latency, and throughput of the data. Azure offers 5 levels of consistency. I believe other services offer 2. Azure has strong, bounded staleness, session, consistent prefix, and eventual consistency. And these levels are well defined, and each level provides availability and performance trade-off. So if we look at that, we can see eventual is pretty straightforward. Eventually, the data will replicate and sync. So it has a weaker consistency, but higher availability, lower latency, and higher throughput. Strong is the opposite. It has a very strong consistency, but it has lower availability, higher latency, and lower throughput. The session is kind of in the middle. The user doing the reading and writing will always see their changes in their session, but other users have to wait until the replication happens. And you have to understand how each consistency level works so you can identify them in different scenarios. Other topics in the non-relational data storage solution include providing access to data to meet security needs and requirements, implementing high availability, disaster recovery, and global distribution. So if we move into the implementation of relational data stores, we have choices between Azure SQL Server and Synapse, formerly Azure Data Warehouse. Again, you have to be familiar with all the ways to create the databases using the portal, the command line interface, and PowerShell. You have to understand how each of these systems are built. SQL Server is built in database transaction units, or DTUs. You can set it up so that there's a single database that uses all the DTUs, or you can have an elastic pool that lets multiple databases share those resources. You may need a managed instance or a SQL database. There are some things that are specific to each type, and you must know what those are so you can choose the correct option. Then we have Synapse, which combines the traditional data warehousing with analytics and big data. It gives you a way to ingest, prepare, manage, and serve your data for business analytics and machine learning. Synapse, however, is built with DWU, data warehouse units, and the compute costs are calculated separately from the storage costs. So what that means is when you create your Synapse instance, you get to select the performance level. We can see here that the Gen 1 storage is no longer available, so you have to use the Gen 2. It starts at $1.51 an hour. If you do the 1,000 DWUs, you're going to pay $15.10 for an hour's worth of processing time. You can scale that all the way down to 100 DWUs, which gives you $1.50 per hour, all the way up to 30,000 at $453 an hour. So once you've created your Synapse instance and you've told it how much money you want to spend for each DWU, if you do not go out and pause your warehouse instance of the Synapse instance that you just created, you will get billed. I used my entire monthly allotment of training funds on Azure because I didn't know that you have to pause your Synapse instance, or it just sits there and it bills you and it bills you and it bills you. So that, however, is one of the benefits of it, because in your scripts, you can pause and start the warehouse only when you need it. So you can store your files in one location, start and stop the warehouse to load the data as you need it, or run your reports or whatever you need to do it with, and you can save money with that. But this is pro tip, make sure you go and pause your instance. We also have to understand the Synapse architecture. Synapse uses a node-based architecture where connections are made to the control node, which is a single point of entry into Synapse, and then the MPP, Massively Parallel Processing Engine, optimizes the queries and passes those into the operations to the compute nodes. There are a maximum of 60 available compute nodes, so your data can potentially be spread across all of the nodes. The DMS that's used in the SQL pool is the data movement service, and that's part of how the data obviously gets moved from where it is to where you want it to be in the Azure storage. Understanding how the nodes are set up is critical to understanding the sharding of the data and what distribution options you have to choose for the tables. There are 3. A round-robin distribution spreads the data evenly across the nodes and is best for staging tables. A replicated distribution caches a full copy of the table on each node and is best for small tables like dimensions. And the hash distribution, where a hash function is used to assign a row to a node and is best for fact tables. And you have to consider the selection of the distribution column to optimize the table to select the correct distribution and partitioning so that the queries perform efficiently. We also have to know things about Polybase, which is a tool included with Synapse that allows you to query data files stored in blob storage or Azure Data Lake. You have to know the steps required to configure the Polybase connection, and there are quite a few. You have to know what order they have to happen in. Security includes knowing about Azure Active Directory, role-based security, access keys, and Azure Key Vault. You also have to have an understanding of high availability and disaster recovery, using geo-replication and availability zones. Active geo-replication is an Azure SQL database feature that allows you to create readable secondary databases in a same or different region, but it is not supported by SQL Managed Instance. If you need a geographic failover for SQL Managed Instance, you have to use auto failover groups for a geographic failover. You have to know the different ways to back up and restore the databases, when failover servers versus failover groups are appropriate. And these are just some of the topics that are covered in this section. And the final concentration in the first section of section test 1 is the manage of data security. First, you have to understand about data masking, dynamic data masking, which is to limit the exposure of sensitive data, preventing users who should not have access to the data from viewing it. You can create custom masking rules, and there are several default built-in masking patterns. You have to know which data masking technique to use in which situation. You have to be able to identify, based on query results, what the masking rule is or what data will be returned for a specific rule. And finally, encryption at rest and in motion. You should know the types of data encryption and what always encrypted means, how to protect the data. Encryption in rest, meaning that the data is encrypted on the disk so that if somebody were to get a hold of the physical disk, it would be almost impossible without the encryption key to get the data off. Encryption in motion refers to the ability to encrypt the data that's being transferred using transparent data encryption, and it encrypts the data in real time. And the always encrypted feature allows you to encrypt data within your client applications prior to storing it in Azure SQL database. You'll have to be able to identify which encryption method is correct for the scenario presented to you. So that wraps up the first section of the first test. So we're going to move on to part 2 of test 1, which is developing and managing the data processing using both batch processing and streaming or real time. Here's a standard pattern for using a lot of the cloud services and applications that are available to do a batch and streaming process. First, we have to ingest the data from our business apps, our customs apps, our sensors and devices. We ingest it using things like Data Factory or Event Hub and the IoT Hub. You have to be able to know the difference between those two, the Event Hub and IoT Hub, and when you would use one over the other. The main trick to remember is that for IoT Hub, you can use bidirectional communication back to the device. Event Hub is a one-way. So if you're presented with a situation where it asks something about bidirectional communication, you're going to use IoT Hub. You have to have a place to store your information. So you're going to use your data lake or blob storage. You have to prep and train using Databricks. We're going to model and serve. We have our Cosmos DBs, our SQL databases, and our SQL warehouse. We send those out to analysis services, and then we have all of our intelligence tools, predictive analytics, operational reports, and dashboards that use all of the data that we've created. Within the Databricks and the analytics portion, you have to be able to identify different windowing functions and when you would use one over the other. There's 4 windowing functions: tumbling, hopping, sliding, and session. There are reasons for using one over the other. A tumbling window is one that the event repeat. They do not overlap, and an event, the tumbling window repeats. They do not overlap, and the event cannot belong to more than one tumbling window at a time. And this is used for things like, tell me the number of tweets that have happened in the last 10 minutes. A hopping window is a tumbling window that jumps forward in time by a fixed period. Sliding windows output events for points in time when the content of the window actually changes. So when an event enters or exits the window. And then the session is a group of events that arrive at a similar time. And these are used, these are just Windows functions that are used in the group by clause that allows you to group events into time periods so that you can do analytics and reporting on them. And the final part of test 1 is the monitor data and storage and data processing. The monitoring portion is almost all done through the Azure portal. So you should familiarize yourself with how to implement monitoring on all the storage and database products we've talked about. Blob storage, data lakes, Synapse Analytics, Cosmos DB. You have to know how to monitor the relational and non-relational data sources using the portal tools, configuring alerts, and implementing auditing. For optimizing, we have to troubleshoot data partitioning bottlenecks, which goes back to what our data is querying by so that we make sure that we get it distributed across the Azure Synapse nodes correctly. Data lake storage, your stream analytics. Is it a bottleneck between the data storage and the processing, or is there something in the processing that's holding things up? And you have to be able to manage the data lifecycle. So specifically when we're talking about the monitoring, these are some of the things that we're going to look into: system-wide monitoring, alerts, troubleshooting, and optimization. So we move on to test 2, designing an Azure data solution. Again, broken down into 3 different sections: design a data storage solution, design a data processing solution, and design for data security and compliance. When we look deeper, we're going to recommend Azure data storage solutions based on requirements, design non-relational and relational cloud, design batch. I mean, this looks exactly like the last slide. And it is, because like I said, there's a lot of overlap between the two tests and what you have to know and the things that you have to do on the tests. And DP201 is a lot of the same material, a lot of the same questions, just from a little bit different of a viewpoint. So we're going to have to recommend data storage solutions based on technical and business requirements. We have to understand the partitioning, the distribution types, non-relational and cloud storage. So this is almost a lot like what we just talked about. The same thing goes for the non-relational data stores. We have to know almost the exact same things for designing those as we do for implementing them. We have to know which ones are the right ones to use at any given time. Why would you choose one over the other? On the relational data stores, same thing. We have to know when we would choose a SQL server, what kind of SQL server we would use. Polybase, where are we going to store our data? Security, who's going to have access to it? High availability and disaster recovery, where are we going to put the data so that it's available when we need it? Again, the batch processing, data solutions. We're going to be designing those. We have to know which piece of the data stack we're going to use to do any particular thing. We're going to use Data Factory to move the data. We're going to use Databricks to create clusters and analyze the data. We're going to use IoT to get the information off of our IoT hub to get the information off of the Internet of Things devices that we're using. So it's really just a matter of looking at it from an architectural level. What is the design versus the implementation level? How are we going to put this into effect? Source data and data policies and standards. Again, this is a little more of an architecture level. You want to make sure that only the people that need access to things have access to things. And the Azure is set up in such a way that you can be very granular in the way that you allow people. You can create data policies so that things that are HIPAA or GDPR are tagged so that those get special treatment. They get audited when they're changed. There's a bunch of high-level things that you can do to architect things so that you are in compliance with the laws or the regulations of your industry. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Just practice, practice. So I will say that passing a Microsoft certification test, you have to practice. Whether you use a free tool or you pay for it, there are sites that cover the gamut of what you can do and what you can learn. Microsoft itself has some great tools available and the learning pathways that are available. This is free. This is on the DP200 exam certification page. The link is in the footer on the page here. You can go through all of these modules and just get a basic understanding of every piece of what is on the exam. This is built totally around the exam requirements. When you dive down into each topic, you can see that there are 6 units in this one. They're just a couple of minute read. You go through, you get the information about that, gives you little points. This one's worth 700 points. But you get a basic understanding of all of the topics that Microsoft expects you to know about in order to pass this test. I will say that it's very high level and a little on the light side in some ways when it comes to the technical things that you have to know to actually pass the test. There are paid ways that you can get help and assistance. MeasureUp, MindHub, and Exam Labs are 3 of the paid sites that you can use. I actually used the MeasureUp site. I really liked it because it was exactly like the testing environment. You could set it up so that it had the exam prep, you had the timer, It worked almost identically to the platform that Microsoft or the Pearson uses to do the exam. So you get really familiar with how it works and how it feels so that when you get to the test, you're actually not having to struggle with understanding how to take it. It gives you graphics and overall performance. That one low dip down at the bottom, I timed out. I had to leave. I really didn't get a 0 on the test. But it does gives you the opportunity to see how you improve over time. It also has some options in it where you can just get all of the test pool questions. You can set it up so that if you get the answer wrong, it pops up and tells you, oh, this one's wrong, so that you don't have to wait until the end to get feedback. You get immediate feedback on the stuff that you're getting incorrect so that you can go learn it or make a note that you want to go and do additional research on that topic. MindHub and Exam Labs may also have those same types of perks and the ability to do those, but I don't have any experience with them, so I don't know. Now, I will say that I also used Exam Topics. Exam Topics is a free site, and I really liked it because when I was doing the measure up tests, you get to where you've taken the test 15 times and you just know the answer. You know the answer of that question because you just know. You've done the test 15 times. So I liked the Exam Topics because you could go to it and read other questions that are different from the test bank that you're looking at and see if you just memorized or if you've actually learned. Now, the Exam Topics one, it's free. There's robot, you're not a robot, you're not a robot. It keeps asking you that, which is kind of annoying. But it does let you see other answers. They also get things wrong, which gives you the opportunity to go and investigate more about which one is the right answer, because that it's not, since it's not paid for, it's just kind of community hosted. So wanted to make sure that I was learning stuff. So I would go out and use the Exam Topics as like a backup for that. So what do you need to know to actually take the exam? And how do you do that? Well, first you schedule it. You go to this website, tell it you want to take the test, takes you off to the Pearson site and lets you pick a day and you schedule all of that. It asks you to get set up on the system check. You want to make sure that you do that on the computer that you're going to take the test on, and make sure that you do that before your testing date. You want to be prepared the day of the exam. You want to make sure that when you log in, everything is good. Before you log in for the test, you want to make sure that you clear your testing area. They don't want papers that you can reach because the proctor's watching you while you're taking the test. My first time, I started to whisper the test to read to myself, just because I like to hear the question, not just read the question. I really wanted to hear it so that I made sure that I understood it. And I started to whisper, and the proctor was like, you need to be quiet. So zipper your mouth. Can't have any papers around you. You have to take your watch off. You have to take your phone with you. Clear desk. I've had some coworkers that have set up a card table in the middle of their spare bedroom where there's nothing else around them because they have very messy offices. My proctor asked me a question about my extra monitors that were attached to my work computer. I was taking it on my personal computer. So there's these things that you've got to make sure. You've got to take pictures of your work area and upload those the day of the test, so they review those. So just being a little bit prepared, knowing what to expect, doing that prep before the test so that when you go in to do the test, you're good. You should log in 15 minutes prior to your exam time, just in case there's issues. You will get 180 minutes to complete all of the questions, about 45 of them. I think they changed it every once in a while, a little less, a little more. And then do it. Sign up for the test. You may never feel like you're ready. Neither of the times I took the test, I felt prepared. There was always more to learn because there's just so much that the test could cover. And it would be just my luck to get a ton of questions about PowerShell and Hadoop, which I know barely anything about. And so it's just a crapshoot of which questions are you going to get? You have to know enough about a lot of things so that whatever gets thrown at you, you can answer those questions. If you don't pass, you'll at least know how close you were. So what types of questions can you expect to get on the test? There are case studies where you're presented with the same situation and given 3 or 4 different options and asked, will this work? Yes or no. Here's the same scenario. Will this work? Yes or no. Yes or no questions, just plain up yes or no questions. Fill in the blank. You may get a list of some PowerShell script that you have to drag and drop the right thing into the box location on the screen. Or you get a list of 5 or 6 different services and you have to pick the right one and drag it. The multiple choice, standard multiple choice, and then ordered tasks. So when I said before that the Polybase requires a lot of setup, so you have to create the external tables and you have to do the file structure and you have to connect the thing and you have to build a regular table, and it asks you all the steps that you have to do in order. There's some questions that just say, what steps do you have to do? And I'm pretty good with those. But the in order, man, every time I'd get one out of the wrong spot. So order tasks. I think those were probably some of the hardest questions that I found on the test. So now we're going to go through some questions, and if we have a chance at the end, we'll go into the Azure portal to look at a couple of things.
Hey, Leslie, I have one question that was presented.
Yes.
For those who get certified, how would this help job seekers or those pivoting to a new career path without like work experience?
I want to say that a lot of companies are realizing that you don't necessarily have to have education, a formal education to get a job. I mean, a lot of places still require like a 4-year degree. But I think that by having certifications, especially if it's something that's going to enhance something that maybe you already do, maybe at your job you already do like some Excel pivot charts and work with data some. And within your organization, you wanted to get a certification so that you could move into a different team without having to go get a college degree in IT. So I think that it just allows you to show your ability to learn, and 2, that you are able to do these types of things, because this is hard. I mean, you have to know a lot of stuff. And I think that the certification process itself is set up so that you can have a foot in to a new career by showing your proficiency at being able to do these. And there are a lot of positions out there where companies are moving to the cloud. It's expensive to keep SQL servers on-prem. And so there are a lot of companies that are moving things to the cloud, and being able to demonstrate proficiency in the ability to do that work, I think is critical in helping you move forward into a new career or move up into a career path that you've already chosen.
Great, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to pull up the poll. Get my panel here. So question 1, we're going to go through, these are from the exam topics website that I was telling you about. These are sample questions that are free and available on the internet, so I do not believe that I'm breaking any non-disclosure by showing these. This is some questions from the DP200 test. They have questions on the DP201. It shows you which topic. This one's topic 1. You are a data architect. The engineering team needs to configure synchronization of data. Here are the things that the synchronization process must do: an initial synchronization to an Azure SQL database, and bidirectional data synchronization after the initial. So which Does it show up? Oh, there we go. Yay, we got people collecting responses. All right. Oh, yeah, there we go. About half of you voted. Oh, there we go. Anybody else gonna vote? 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm gonna close it. All right, we'll share the results. Can y'all see that? Did we get it? 93% said Azure Data SQL Data Sync, and a couple people said the Data Migration Assistant. All right. We'll hide that one. Let's see. What is the correct answer? The correct answer is E, SQL Data Sync. So, oh, I lost my notes. So yes, it is SQL Data Sync. I had some notes on our other choices there. Let's see, let's go back. So transactional replication is useful when you are keeping several distributed databases in a synchronized state, or you're migrating databases from one SQL Server instance or managed instance to another by continuously publishing the changes. The Data Migration Assistant helps you upgrade a modern data platform and recommends performance testing. It allows you to move your schema data and uncontained objects from your source server to your target. SQL agent jobs are not available in Azure SQL database. So that's one of those little tidbits that you have to know that, oh, we can rule out SQL Server agent jobs because we're on an Azure SQL database and that is not supported. And then the SQL Data Sync is it's a service that lets you synchronize the data bidirectionally across multiple databases, both on-prem and in the cloud. So 93% of you were right. We got the Azure SQL Data Sync. Another thing that I like about when you're doing the learning is that you find things out like you can't publish from an Azure SQL database single or pooled database. Maybe the question you're going to ask is something about using transactional replication using a publish from the database. But you'd know that you can't do that. But it's those little bitty things that you learn when you go to these reference documents that are in the answers that allow you to remember, oh, I think I read that thing. There were quite a few questions that I got right because, oh, I went and read that thing. All right, so question number 2 we've got here. Let's see. Which 2 APIs should you use to connect to a key value and a wide column NoSQL database type? We can use the table API, the Mongo, to remember that's a document database, the Gremlin, which is relational or graph database using nodes and relations. The SQL API is the standard Cosmos DB API, and then Cassandra, which is wide columns. All right. Oh, see, this is a good one. We got lots of choices going on here. Got about 30% of you voted. Give you another couple of seconds. Okay. All right, so we've got the Cassandra API, which we know is one of the correct answers because that's the columnar. The second one is the database that uses the key value. And some of us said the table, some said the Mongo, and some said the SQL API. What's pretty interesting about this is that we can see here, there are 26 comments in the discussion area about this. And that's because the answer says Mongo and Cassandra, but when we read it, answer B says Azure Cosmos DB. Well, that's not Mongo. Azure Cosmos DB, if we use the default Cosmos DB API, that's going to be D, the SQL API. And these are the questions that I always learned the most from. When there was a discussion, I would go in, I would read what all those people said, and then I'd come down here to these references, and I would read those, and I would go, and I would have to figure out for myself, what's the right answer? What if I didn't know, what would I pick? So I think that some of these where maybe the app is wrong are good to learn from. Question 3 is about the Hive being able to do batch processing using geospatial data. Sorry, my mouse is not coming. Where'd you go, mouse? There it is, there it is. All right, we'll do question 3. So if you wanted to use a native client application to run interactive queries and batch processes, we can use HD Insight tools for Visual Studio, Hive View, the HDI Insight, REST API, or Azure Data Factory. All right. All right. Looks like most of us went with, oh, it's like half and half between C and D. All right, we'll have to remember that. So what do we think? Question B is a web browser to run interactive queries and batch processes. Okay, are we tired of the polls? Nobody's answered. Okay, somebody answered. Who are evenly distributed on this one. All right, we'll close that one. Oh, let me share. Let me go back and share. Okay. And then finally, which is your for the final batch processing applications that use Azure HD Insight. Now, HD Insight is the Hadoop tool. If you're not familiar with that. And these are all ways that you can get into and deal with Hadoop files, running queries against them. And again, my fear was I would get 100 questions about Hadoop, which I knew very little about, which is one of the reasons I included this question here, because it's a good thing to get exposure to stuff that maybe you're not that familiar with. So there we go with that one. And let's see, what are our answers? So we would use HD Insight tools for Visual Studio, Hive View as the browser, and the REST API for batch processing to get the data out. All right. Here's an example of one of the case studies. We'll go through this real quick. Here's the actual question. Is the proposed solution ensuring that files are stored over 250 megabytes? Does this solution meet the goal of designing an HD Insight Hadoop cluster solution that uses Gen 1 storage, requiring POSIX permissions and enabling diagnostic logging for auditing? Here's the exact same question, but this proposed solution is implement compaction jobs to combine small files into larger files. And our third option is ensure that the files stored are smaller than 250 megabytes. In the testing, you don't get to go back to review these. So after you answer a question in this section, you will not be able to return to it. As a result, these questions will not appear in the review section. So we can go through and we can see that, yes, we can ensure that the files stored are larger than 250 megabytes is the correct answer. Yes, implementing compaction jobs to combine small files into large files meets the goal. But ensure that files stored are smaller than 250 megabytes is wrong. Really what you want to do is combine them so that they're between 250 and 2 megs or 2 gigs. And so by reading the data lake storage best practices, you can go in and you can find out. But that's the example of the case study. Here's another one. This one is from 201, which kind of shows the difference in, yes, I know, I can see we're wrapping it up. This is my last slide.
Well, no. All I'm seeing is question 3C. I'm not seeing your slides.
Oh, did I stop? I see.
Yeah, I'm seeing the poll.
Yep, I see what you're saying. Let me get back to here. I thought I hided that.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
All right, there we go. Thanks. So here we are with a test 201 question where you are designing a solution. And here is a requirement that talks about notebook scheduling, cluster automation, and Power BI visualization. And which service should you recommend? And some of these, maybe 2 or 3 of them would be appropriate because of 1 or 2 things. But if we look at Azure Batch, that creates and manages compute nodes. There's no cluster job scheduler software to install, manage, or scale. That comes right from the definition. Okay, if there's no cluster or job scheduler, well, that doesn't meet the requirements because it says we want cluster automation. So we can eliminate A. Azure Stream Analytics. The job consists of an input, a query, and an output. Not really much about clusters going on with Stream Analytics. Machine Learning Studio is the web portal for data scientists developing Azure Machine Learning. Again, doesn't really sound like what we're looking for. Azure Databricks, which is the Spark clusters. Oh, look, cluster, we got our word that we're looking for. So maybe Azure Databricks. Azure HD Insight, well, we just talked about that. That's the Hadoop tool. If it were me, I'd be betting on Azure Databricks. So some of it can be reasoned out just because of the way they've asked the question or the thing that they've included in the question is your clue or your trigger to, oh, that's Databricks. And we were right, that's Databricks. So we've covered a lot. We've covered the types of certifications, the requirements that you need to get the data engineering, practice sites that you can go to either learn or test your skills, testing topics. We've looked at some of the questions that are out there and the types of questions that you'll get on the test. And it's a lot. And one of the things that you have to do is just do it. Like I said earlier, there is so much and you have to just know enough about a lot of things so that you can pass the test. And some people are good test takers and some people are not. And I struggle with this. I'm one of those people that I can go figure out how to do it, but taking a test and answering questions like that, it was a real struggle for me to first of all feel confident enough to take the test. And let me tell you, when she told me I passed, I whooped. She probably jumped out of her chair. I squealed so loud. But I believe that all of you can do it too. Thank you. I hope you learned something. Any questions? Got a few extra minutes.
Hey, Leslie, did you use any books or did you just use online resources?
I just used online resources. I did not use any books. Let's see, one of the questions, for those without the resources for the paid training prep materials, do you think the free resources are an adequate substitute? I will say that the exam topics questions were just as good as the measure up questions as far as the variety of questions and the topics that were covered. It's just the interface isn't as friendly to learn from. You know, like I said, it pops up a you're not a robot, are you? Even after you've created an account, it still asks you, you're not a robot, are you? The interface to get the answers, right? It's just the measure up is very much like the test. But as far as the questions, the exam topic questions were just as detailed, just as variety, covered all of the same things. So if you don't have the resources to pay for it, the exam topic site would get you everything that you need. Is this a good path for a traditional DBA to move into? So there is a DBA certification, so that if you want to stay in the DBA realm, you could get that. If you want to move into more of a data engineer, then I think that if you had the on-prem DBA skills combined with the data engineer certification, that would definitely just enhance your skill set and your marketability. Yeah, there we go. I think that's all the questions.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I actually was just thinking about this yesterday about getting some additional certifications, and this is one of them I was looking at. So,
well, there you go. If I can do it, you can do it. I promise.
I totally appreciate. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We'll have the recording up on the website in a day or two. Thank you. Have a great day.